Welcome back to the channel, everybody. I'm Dino. You know, every time that I clean my air filter and oil it and reinstall it, I get thinking back to questions that I get on my service video for that air filter. And most of the questions revolve around this little thing right here. Now, if you're a DR owner, you probably know exactly what this thing is, where it sits, and you might even know what it's for. But for those who don't, today I'm going to talk about this little thing, the importance of keeping it clean, and potentially some upgrades for it if you're in the mood for that. So why don't you sit back, grab yourself something cold to drink, and enjoy Dino's Tinker Shed. I'll see you in a minute. Okay, so what the heck is this thing? It's definitely not the world's smallest trumpet, but most DR owners will tell you that this is actually the secondary air filter on the DR650, and it sits just underneath the seat of the bike, sort of at the very back of the fuel tank itself. The purpose of this is slightly different than your primary air filter. Most people know that your primary air filter's role is to take sort of naturally occurring air that has all kinds of dirt and particulates in it and filter it before it actually enters the intake tract of the carburetor and ultimately into the combustion chamber of your DR650. Now, of course, if your air filter, your primary air filter, isn't clean, dirty, contaminated air is going to get in there and actually extrude hone your cylinder over time. It's going to wear out orifices within your carburetor itself and just ultimately not do anything good for your motorcycle. Now, the secondary air filter has a similar but different role within the DR650. And the reason you have one of these is mostly because of the type of carburetor you have. The reason your DR650 has one of these filters is completely related to the fact it comes with a Mikuni BST40 constant velocity carburetor. Constant velocity carburetors are different than a regular flat slide carburetor in the fact that your throttle cable is not directly attached to the throttle slide itself. Instead, your throttle is actually attached to a butterfly valve that sits within the airflow plenum. As you open this butterfly valve, it creates vacuum that is transferred up through the carburetor body and ultimately pulls the slide and needle valve up from their seat, allowing air and fuel to enter the carburetor and ultimately your combustion chamber at the right mix. As that slide moves up and down, there's a rubber bellows that needs to have equalized air pressure on the opposite side, otherwise it wouldn't be able to actually move. So it's ported out to atmosphere through a tube that leads, believe it or not, up underneath your seat and ultimately to this little air filter. So as the slide moves up and down, air is drawn in and exhaled from the bellows and in and out through this filter. Failure to actually maintain this means you may end up with debris entering that sealed chamber in the top part of your carburetor, ultimately leading to damage or plugged circuits like your enrichment circuit or choke circuit, if you will. So it's important to keep this little guy clean. And in fact, the reason I have this one in my hand is the fact that I have a K&N style filter on my DR650 that I upgraded not long after I bought the bike. Now, I've already cleaned it once, but it's ready for a cleaning now after the end of the season. So today we're going to pull mine out. I'm going to show you how dirty it is, how to clean it, and ultimately how to reinstall it. and maybe we'll talk a little bit about what happens if this thing gets too dirty and how it can impact performance on your motorcycle. Okay, let's take a look at this little filter. This is where your factory air filter actually sits, the breather filter. You can see that I actually have a K&N style washable filter, and I'm going to wash that today. But it sits tidily just behind the gas tank here, and you can see this air hose or this air pipe here that runs down to the actual carburetor. It's important that this is located in an area with relatively calm air. And you can see it sort of sits in that little pocket there. The seat slides underneath here under this horn, and it's actually protected a little bit from the snorkel here, which draws air into the actual air box itself. All right, now that we know where the filter is, how do we get it off? Well, it couldn't be simpler. The filter's usually held in place with a small clamp. Now this one that I have here, I can actually squeeze together with my fingers. Some of them may have a stronger little clamp on there that you either need a screwdriver for or a pair of pliers. But for me, it's just going to be squeezing the actual connectors, sliding that clamp down the pipe, and then pulling out the filter. Here you can see the size difference between the Uni filter here, the K&N style filter, and just the stock filter itself. Now before we get to cleaning this, let's just have a look at the stock filter a little bit. Now the stock filter is a one-piece unit here. You can't open it even though there's a seam there. And there's some filter cloth that sits down in there. I'm going to see if I can get a little better shot to show you what it looks like. I think this is a pretty good picture of what you're going to find inside of this filter. Looking down to the very bottom here is your filter media itself, and it's very, very similar to the filter media used on your primary air filter. Periodically, you need to pull this out, wash it with soap and water, let it dry, and then re-oil it with air filter oil. If you fail to do so, if you don't oil it, it's going to let particulates through. The oil plays a very important role in any kind of filter like this. The actual filter media is held in place with this little plastic retainer clip here, this little X-shaped piece of material. And it snaps down and is held in place by these little grooves that are molded into the body of the filter itself. I'm going to grab some needle nose pliers or maybe some tweezers, and we'll pull this thing out to show you how this filter actually comes out of the filter body. Alright, I'm just going to use some needle nose pliers here, and I'm actually going to grasp it close to the edge of that X-shaped piece there, where it's the strongest. And I'm just going to gently pop it out, and it should come out of there relatively easily. It's somewhat flexible. There you go. My favorite X-Man is Cyclops. Now we can reach in and actually pull out the filter media. And you can see there's not a lot of filter media that comes with this stock, but you can see how much dirtier it is on the atmosphere side of the filter. So it is doing its job. Again, I haven't really been using this one for a while because I've been using my K&N. But if you're using yours, you need to wash this, let it dry, and then massage in basically a little bit of air filter oil so that it becomes somewhat sticky and will trap contaminants. If you look down in there, there is another one of these little sort of clips that suspends this filter media about here in the filter. So that's how you would service your stock secondary air filter. When it comes time to reassemble it, I find a little screwdriver like this works very well to gently tuck the air filter down in and make sure that it's seated properly inside the filter housing. Reinserting this little clip can be a little bit challenging. The first time that I did this, I bent it like that, which you're supposed to do, and then tried to install it sort of this way, scooping it up. What I found was when you do this, this edge contacts the filter in there and pushes it and deforms it. What I've learned is that if you flip it over and put the cup facing up when you insert it, it goes in much easier. It just sort of slides in like this, and then you can just use your finger and push it down and it'll click right in. This took me a while to learn, but it does work really well, and I find that's the easiest way to get that little clip back in there. Even though you've cleaned and oiled this stock air filter here, I think most people will realize that there really is not a great deal of protection from that sort of small disc-shaped filter that's in this housing. There is a mod for this, and many DR owners choose to do it. What they do is they'll go out and buy this open cell foam air cleaner. This one's for a Briggs & Stratton lawnmower, but you can get just about any generic lawnmower air filter like this. It's made from the same material as most air filters, and it's oilable, just like the one on your DR. What you do is cut a piece out of here either with an X-Acto knife, or today I'm going to actually use a piece of 3/4 inch copper pipe that I've sharpened up on my flap wheel with my angle grinder. You oil this up and then you put it right on top of the disc filter and the retainer clip that's in the stock housing. What this does is twofold. One is obviously it's going to provide much greater protection for the internal components of your carburetor, but it also makes it much easier to clean. Most DR owners will tell you that all you have to do is pull that auxiliary foam out, wash and oil that, and you don't even have to worry about the disc that's down inside there because it never gets dirty anymore. In fact, it acts more like a secondary air filter than the primary one it's designed to be. So I'm going to do this today and put this in here, even though I'm not going to use this, just to show you how I would do it. All right, what if you just don't clean this thing? And I have a feeling a lot of DR owners really don't, because they don't know what this is. They might be religious about cleaning their standard air filter, but when it comes to that one, they're just oblivious. Well, over and above the obvious damage to the carburetor if it gets so dirty that it starts sucking particulates in, probably what most DR owners are going to notice is that the carburetor is going to become less responsive. And this comes right back to the BST-40's constant velocity architecture. In order for those bellows, that diaphragm, to actually be pulled up with vacuum, atmospheric pressure has to freely flow below it into the void chamber that's built into the carburetor body itself. This allows those bellows to freely move up and down as air is exchanged across this filter. If it gets very, very dirty, that free-flowing nature of the standard air filter here is lost, which means that the crispness of your throttle is going to be reduced as air is struggling to get by this filter and fill the void as you're asking for more horsepower. Now, the BST-40 is already known to be a little bit of a sluggish carburetor when it comes to throttle response. So simply by keeping this thing clean, you can ensure that your stock BST-40 is going to perform as well as it can to give you the best performance that you want. Sooner than upgrading my stock secondary air filter on the DR, I decided to do what a lot of people do, and that is upgrade completely to a unifilter. Now, these little unifilters are very similar to regular car air filters, like a K&N filter, where they use a oil-soaked cotton gauze that's held in place with a metal mesh, and it provides better airflow and better filtration than what we have here with the stock secondary air filter. It does, however, need maintenance, the same as the stock filter, but the maintenance is slightly different. Now to service this filter, I'm going to use this, which is a K&N recharger kit. It's used in the same type of filters and the same technology. It's a one-piece kit. It comes with a specialized degreaser and a specialized air filter oil that's in the form of an aerosol can. So this should be very easy to use. Why don't we get started cleaning the unifilter right now? The instructions say to fully soak the filter with this cleaner. So that's what I'm going to do, and then let it sit for 10 minutes. It does say to spray both sides of the filter, but I'm not 100% sure how I would get inside of here. So I'm just going to let this soak. I'll come back and agitate this with a nylon brush in 10 minutes. I'll just use this nylon brush here to kind of come in and agitate the actual oil and debris that's stuck to this thing. And I'm going to hit it just with a little bit more of this degreaser. This cap is not the best on this thing, I'll tell you. There we go. You really need to soak this, I think, to make it work. And I'm going to use like a scooping motion, not straight across. I'm going to try to scoop the material out and free it up. I wouldn't use a regular brass or wire brush to do this, but a stiff nylon brush like this, I think, works pretty good. I'm going to let this sit again for about another 5 minutes here. It's been sitting about 5 minutes already. There we go. And then I'll take it downstairs to my laundry tub and I'll rinse this out very, very well with warm water. And I'll let it sit overnight before we come back and oil it. Here it is after it's dried overnight, and you can see it's substantially cleaner. It's still got a few stains here. I'm sure that's where it was the dirtiest, but overall this thing is ready for some oil. What the manual for this air filter oil says to do is to actually hold it about 3 inches away from the pleats and spray it until it's uniformly covered. Then you let it sit for about 20 minutes and come back and see if you've missed anything. So why don't we give that a try right now? Now you could use just regular air filter oil, non-aerosol type, and that might actually be a little easier to try and get this small filter covered, but this is what I have today, so I'm going to use it. It covers really easy. And I'm trying to get the crowns of each one of the pleats here. And I think that looks pretty good. I don't see anything that I've missed. Even when you buy these unifilters brand new, you need to coat them with some kind of air filter oil because they're shipped dry. So whether you use K&N brand or Unifilter brand or just some other air filter oil, it's important that you coat this and let it sit and tack up before you actually install it into your DR650. This looks really, really good. That K&N air filter oil has turned all that cotton a beautiful deep crimson red. I'm confident that I have good coverage on this and it should provide great protection for months to come. You know, when I started researching this little guy, I found it difficult to find good information on this secondary air filter. I went to my normal source, which is my manual, and there really isn't a lot in the Climber's Manual about this little thing. DR Riders Forum did have some information, but probably the best source of information that's straightforward and factual was on a web page called BushPig Performance. Now, BushPig Performance is an online retail store that specializes in the DR650 and other old school thumpers like this. I found out about it when my friend Carl bought his Parabellum windshield from them last summer, and they were super friendly to deal with. The thing I like about them is they're passionate about the DR650, and they have a nice resource tab on their webpage that covers things like how to change your wheel bearings, or how to balance your tires on your DR650, and they have an article on the secondary air filter, how to maintain it, what the different mods are, and how it actually impacts and functions within the bike itself. And that's where a lot of my information came from. These are great, passionate people that like riding this style of bike. And for me, although I love ProCycle down in the States, it does cost a fair bit to ship it to Canada, and then I'm dealing with duty and exchange rate. When I buy from BushPig, it's Canadian dollars and they ship it to me, you know, for a cost, but it's always a little bit less than what I would pay from ProCycle. So if you're in Canada and you're looking for parts for your DR650, try to look up BushPig and see what you think. Now, they don't even know I'm making this part of the video. They're not sponsoring me or anything. They just seem like really good people that want to sort of invest in the industry because they have a passion for it too. So check them out if you have a minute. Well, that wraps up today's episode on servicing your secondary air filter on your DR650. If you liked it, why don't you leave a comment and tell me what your thoughts are on this filter. Do you use this K&N style filter, or do you use the stock filter the way it is? I'd be really interested to know, and I'm sure others would as well. If I missed anything, please, by all means, chime in, because like I say, I'm only human. I make mistakes. If you really did like this content, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. It really does help me build this channel, and it helps YouTube to suggest it to other people out there in the YouTube-verse who may want to see it. Until then, I'm going to put the seat back on and get the side covers on. It's early March here, so riding season's not too far away, and I cannot wait to get the DR back out on the road. So until then, you have yourself a great day, and I'll see you soon here on Dino's Tinker Shed. Bye for now.